G'day farmer friends, Pasquale here from Beeswax, and I'm joined today by Serge from Locumate. We met each other at APP, and we thought it would be a really good idea for us to do a video together because of something I guess that we've both seen in the industry across the treatment of locums. So I guess first of all, I'll hand over to Serge, and Serge can tell us a little bit about Locumate, and then we can talk about how locums have traditionally been paid in the past and how they should be getting paid and how superannuation should be treated.
Sure, thank you, Simon. So Locumate is a marketplace where pharmacies and locums can actually connect directly.
Yes.
We've built a platform to provide transparency for both parties, where a pharmacy can actually go in, put a shift up, a locum can review that shift and actually take that shift. We've built in automation, so that way, once a locum finishes their shift, they can submit a timesheet that goes for approval to the pharmacy can then approve it, and then we automate all of the invoicing processes behind the scenes as well.
Yeah, awesome. I guess it's so clever to join them together like that, and so it's so hard to find a locum. When you make it easier, it's going to help everyone, isn't it? So I guess the thing that we wanted to chat about was, in the past, and I know when I was a locum I did this, you'd generate an invoice for the work that you've done, you'd give it to the pharmacy, and you'd include a superannuation amount on that invoice, which typically the pharmacy would pay directly to the pharmacist. What we've found out, and over the course of processing payroll now for nearly 5,000 employees across the country, is that's not right. And it hasn't been right for a while, and it's just sort of been this thing that everybody has gotten used to doing, and there's been instances, I'm not sure if you've heard of anyone, Serge, but there's been instances of guys being caught for not paying superannuation directly to the fund rather than holding on to the pharmacist holding on to the funds.
There's been a couple of high court cases in the healthcare field, which is why this has sort of come to the surface, right? Even though the payments were fully made to the person, because the super amount wasn't split, they were non-compliant.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess the best way to describe it, and I've printed out how the ATO treats it, but the ATO considers workers that work under a contract that is wholly or principally for their labour to be employees for superannuation purposes. This means that superannuation needs to be paid directly to the superannuation fund on their behalf by the employer. So that pretty much spells it out that the ATO considers locums to be...
Correct. And I guess this is where the sort of specifics of a definition of a sole trader come in, right? If you think about hiring someone to do work at your house, they typically bring their own tools to be able to perform that task. Whereas clearly under the ATO definition, where it considers locums go in and perform mainly for their labour. We're not taking any tools with us to be able to do that task. So for the definition of paying super directly to the super fund, locums fall under that banner.
Yeah. And we at Beeswax, we started, as of last financial year, we started processing locum payments through payroll just so that we could get the whole thing compliant. So we've got a system now whereby the locum will submit their details almost like a new employee. We'll enter them in, and then we've recorded the hours that have been worked. We'll still pay them what their invoiced amount is, but the superannuation gets calculated and gets processed as part of our standard monthly superannuation payments. So that's how we've gotten around it from a Beeswax perspective. I believe Locumate's looking at doing something similar.
Well, so we've already rolled this out actually. So as soon as we started everything happening, and I think when we're dealing with Beeswax early in the days as well, so what we do is we actually split the two amounts. There's a super amount with the super details in there, and then the actual payment amount that the locum would get as well, completely separate. We've gone through the process of collecting all of the super data as part of the locum profile setup. So in your example, when we work with Beeswax clients, and the email to you would contain all the data that you actually need to onboard that employee. So even making that process a lot more efficient.
Yeah, great. So I guess what's the takeaway from this video that we're trying to get guys to understand? For me, it's if you are a sole trader, right? So if your ABN lists you as a sole trader, you can't charge the pharmacy your superannuation and expect to receive it. Right? If you want to list it on your invoice, you can, but the pharmacy should be paying that superannuation amount directly to the superannuation fund. You can't add GST to the superannuation amount. That is GST free. If you're earning over, I think it's $70,000 from your business, your sole trader ABN, then you can add GST to your invoice.
Yep.
You know, as long as you're registered for GST. If your ABN is part of a partnership or part of a trust, then you can charge the pharmacy. This is where it gets a little bit confusing. You can charge the pharmacy for superannuation, but it's up to them how they do that. But for the bulk of people, generally it's sole traders that are performing this type of work.
Even across the 1,100 locums registered on a Locumate, 99.8%.
There you
are
go.
sole traders.
Yes, so there you go. So I guess that's the main thing from my perspective. Serge, what do you think?
Also, a point to note is the frequency that an employer is required to pay.
Yeah, right.
Super as well, right? So I know the number one thing that we got was, hey, my invoice was due in 7 days. How come my super hasn't been paid? Each employer's requirement is different based on how ATO classifies them from a super payment, right? So we've got monthly and quarterly options that certain pharmacy or pharmacy groups follow. So that's also something to be mindful of. And the second component of this, we sort of talked offline about this, is the contract.
Yes.
Right? As pharmacies, as employers, a locum can be considered your employee if there's no actual contract in place. So it's one of the key things to consider, which we do automatically on the platform.
Which is awesome.
Engage in the shift, the contract is formed to say it's a service engagement as a contractor, but that's also something that you need to take into account, because yes, you might pay the super directly, but if there's no contract in place, that locum can still be classified as an employee potentially.
Yeah, awesome. So I hope that's given everybody something to think about. I know it's it's always hard when you're changing things, or a perception out there that people have had for quite a while. So if you've got any questions, by all means, hit any of us up on the socials or on email, whichever you like. And hopefully it's been informative. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Cheers.